In the penthouse on the 25th floor of a downtown Chicago skyscraper, the silence was broken by the deafening sound of gunfire. Alexa Reed took a step back, still holding the gun pointed at Michael Foster, who now lay motionless on the white leather couch. Blood was slowly spreading across the upholstery, staining it an ominous purple color. Her hand clutching the weapon did not tremble. There was no fear or regret in her blue eyes, only cold determination. She stared at the man who had provided her with a luxurious life for the past 3 years for another second, then lowered her weapon. The heavy smell of gunpowder and the metallic tang of blood hung in the air. Alexa carefully wiped the gun clean, careful not to leave any prints, and placed it in Michael's hand. Suicide is what it should look like. Then she put on her gloves and began methodically destroying the traces of her presence. The glass with her fingerprints disappeared into her purse to be thrown into the river later. The traces of lipstick on Michael's cheek were wiped away with a napkin. Her hair, which might have been left on the couch or the victim's clothes, was carefully gathered. Michael didn't move. The bullet had entered directly into his right temple. His face froze in an expression of surprise, as if he hadn't believed until the last second that the woman he'd given everything to could do this to him. Alexa took one last look at the crime scene and quietly walked out the back door. She had exactly 45 minutes until the 911 call, the time it would take to get to the restaurant where she was to meet her friend, creating an alibi for herself. 90 minutes later, the emergency dispatcher took a call from a neighbor who heard a suspicious noise coming from the penthouse. Another 16 minutes later, paramedics discovered Michael Foster's body, still showing signs of life. To everyone's surprise, a pulse was palpable, though it was weak and erratic. "We have a male, 34 years old, gunshot wound to the head, blood loss, critical condition," the ambulance crewman radioed as his partners placed Michael on a stretcher. "Get the operating room ready and get a neurosurgeon on standby. The chances are minimal, but they're there." Ambulance sirens cut through the Chicago night silence as the vehicle raced toward the nearest hospital. Every second counted. The paramedic continuously monitored the patient's condition, maintaining his vital functions. The bullet had passed through the temporal lobe, but by some miracle had not hit the vital centers of the brain. It was one of those rare injuries that look fatal but leave a tiny chance of survival. At this time, Alexa was sitting in a fancy restaurant across town, laughing at a story her friend Sarah had told. She looked flawless. Her long red hair was perfectly styled, her makeup emphasized her natural beauty, and her black cocktail dress flattered her slim figure. No one in the restaurant had any idea that only an hour ago, this charming woman had shot a man in cold blood. "Miss Reed?" A voice behind her made Alexa flinch. She slowly turned around and saw 2 police officers. "We need to talk to you. It's about Michael Foster." She blinked, feigning confusion, and then a look of alarm appeared on her face. "Has something happened to Michael?" she asked in a trembling voice, masterfully playing the part of the anxious mistress. "Mr. Foster was taken to the hospital with a gunshot wound. We would like to ask you some questions," the senior officer replied dryly. At Chicago Central Hospital, Dr. James Harris, one of the city's top neurosurgeons, was already preparing for hours of surgery. The 50-year-old doctor with the graying dark hair knew the patient's chances were slim, but in 25 years of practice, he had learned to fight even the most hopeless cases. "The bullet went through the right temporal lobe but didn't hit any major arteries or cross the midline of the brain," he explained to the team of surgeons studying the CT scan images. "Our goal is to remove the bullet, stop the bleeding, and minimize brain swelling. This guy has incredible luck. 1 millimeter to the side and we wouldn't be standing here right now." At the police station, Detective Diane Cole watched Alexa Reed closely through a one-way mirror. The 45-year-old woman with short graying hair and penetrating brown eyes specialized in attempted murder investigations. In her 15 years on the job, she had developed an almost supernatural ability to sense lies. "What can you tell me about your connection to Mr. Foster?" Diana asked, entering the interrogation room. Alexa held herself confidently, but not defiantly. "We've been dating for about 3 years. Michael helps me financially, and I keep him company." She didn't try to hide the nature of their relationship. That would have looked suspicious. Where were you tonight between 8 and 9 o'clock? Here at the Azure restaurant. I came in around 7:30 and met up with a friend, Sarah Green. You can ask the staff or look at the camera footage. Detective Cole made notes in her notebook. When was the last time you saw Mr. Foster? Last night. We had dinner and then I went to my apartment. I have my own apartment. Do you know if Mr. Foster had any enemies? Someone who might have wished him harm? Alexa feigned thoughtfulness. Michael is a successful businessman. People like that always have competitors. But I don't know of anyone who would wish him dead. Meanwhile, in the operating room, Dr. Harris was fighting for Michael's life. The operation was now in its third hour. The bullet had been successfully removed, but the damage was severe. The bleeding had been stopped, but brain swelling was a serious concern. The pressure inside the skull is increasing, the anesthesiologist reported. We need to do something right away. Dr. Harris decided on a decompression craniotomy, removing part of the skull to relieve pressure on the brain. It was a risky procedure, but the only chance to save the patient. Behind the operating room glass, detectives were already gathered, waiting for a chance to talk to the doctor. They realized that if the patient survived and regained consciousness, his testimony could be key to the investigation. At the police station, Detective Cole continued her questioning of Alexa. Miss Reed, did Mr. Foster own a gun? Did he ever mention any intent to harm himself? Alexa shook her head and tears came to her eyes. No, never. I can't believe he could. He was always so upbeat, making plans for the future. Our experts found a gun with Mr. Foster's fingerprints on it at the scene. The initial theory is that it was a suicide attempt. Alexa's face reflected genuine surprise. That's impossible. I don't believe Michael could do such a thing. There must be some explanation. Detective Cole watched the woman's reaction carefully. Something about her behavior seemed unnatural, but there was no reason to detain her yet. We will continue to investigate. Please remain in the city and be available for further questions. Alexa nodded, wiping away her tears. Of course, can I see Michael? He's still in surgery. The doctors will update you on his condition as soon as they get a chance. 6 hours after Michael was admitted to the hospital, the surgery was completed. Dr. Harris, tired but satisfied with the outcome, came out to the waiting detectives. The patient is stabilized. We removed the bullet and part of the skull to reduce intracranial pressure. The next 48 hours will be critical, but unless there are complications, he has a chance of survival. What's the likelihood he'll regain consciousness and be able to talk? One of the detectives asked. It's hard to say. The damage is severe, but it hasn't affected the speech centers. If he survives, he'll likely be able to communicate. There may be memory problems, however. Alexa returned to her apartment around 4 in the morning. She was confident in her alibi. Dozens of people saw her at the restaurant. Cameras recorded the time of her arrival, and the gun with Michael's fingerprints should have inclined the investigation to the version of a suicide attempt. However, the news that Michael had survived worried her. By all calculations, he should have died instantly, or at the very least, before the ambulance arrived. Now all she could do was wait and hope that the brain damage was severe enough that he would never be able to tell the truth. At the police department, Detective Cole stayed up all night studying the case file. Something about Alexa Reed's story didn't add up. She requested surveillance videos from around Michael's penthouse and ballistics results. Her intuition told her it wasn't a suicide attempt. By morning, the first forensic results confirmed her suspicions. The angle of entry of the bullet and the absence of powder residue on Michael's arm indicated that the shot had been fired from a distance of at least half a meter. Suicide was becoming a remote possibility. Everything now depended on whether Michael Foster would survive and whether he would be able to name the man who had tried to kill him. In the silence of the hospital's intensive care unit, only the monotonous beeping of medical equipment could be heard. Michael Foster had been lying motionless for 7 days. His head was partially shaved and bandaged, and wires stretched from numerous tubes and sensors to monitors. His face, usually full of life and energy, now seemed like a wax mask. Dr. James Harris visited his patient daily, scrutinizing the vitals and making notes in the medical chart. The brain swelling is gradually subsiding, which is a good sign, he explained to the nurse on duty. but it's still hard to predict when and if he'll regain consciousness. A police officer was invariably present in the corner of the room. Detective Cole had insisted on round-the-clock surveillance. She did not rule out the possibility of a second assassination attempt. That morning, the 8th day after the shooting, Nurse Elizabeth was checking the IV when she noticed a slight movement in the fingers of the patient's right hand. At first she thought she was imagining it, but after a moment, the fingers trembled again. "Dr. Harris, room 3 now!" Elizabeth called the neurosurgeon over the intercom. By the time the doctor rushed into the room, Michael's eyes were open. He was staring at the ceiling with an unseeing gaze, but was definitely conscious. "Mr. Foster, can you hear me?" Dr. Harris asked, leaning over the patient. "If so, blink, please." Michael blinked slowly. "Great. I'm Dr. Harris. You're in the hospital. You suffered a serious head injury, but you're safe now." The police officer on duty immediately contacted Detective Cole with the happy news. "The patient has regained consciousness. The doctor is checking his condition." 40 minutes later, Diane Cole was already at the hospital. The investigation had progressed over the past week, but was missing a key element: witness testimony. Ballistics testing confirmed that the shot had been fired by someone other than Michael himself, but there wasn't enough evidence to point to a specific person. Dr. Harris met the detective in the hallway. He's stable and responsive to questions. His speech center appears to be intact, but it's difficult for him to speak due to general weakness. "I'm authorizing a brief interrogation, no more than 15 minutes, but keep in mind, his memory may be fragmentary." Diana nodded. "I understand. Thank you, doctor." Michael lay with his eyes half open as the detective entered the room. She introduced herself and cautiously took a seat in the chair next to the bed. "Mr. Foster, I understand this is difficult for you, but we need your help. Do you remember what happened the night of the shooting?" Michael was silent for a few seconds. Then, with a visible effort, he uttered one word: "Alexa." Detective Cole's heart beat faster. "Alexa Reed? Was she with you that night?" "She shot." Each word came hard to Michael, but there was no certainty in his voice. "Are you sure? You saw exactly Alexa Reed shoot you?" "Yes." Michael tried to nod, but a grimace of pain contorted his face. "She didn't expect that I would survive." Diana asked a few more questions, trying to get more details, but Michael was quickly tiring. Before leaving, she promised to return the next day. In the car, she immediately contacted her colleagues. "We have a direct statement from the victim. Prepare a warrant for Alexa Reed's arrest." Alexa was spending the day at the spa when her phone rang. Sarah's name popped up on the screen. She answered it, stepping aside from the other customers. "He's awake," Sarah said without preamble. Alexa felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you sure?" "My cousin works as a nurse at that hospital. She just called. He's not only regained consciousness, but he's already talking to a detective." "Shit," Alexa thought frantically. What could he have told them? He had to be dead. "I don't know, but you'd better be prepared. If he gave your name, without direct evidence, it's just the words of a man with a brain injury against my impeccable alibi." Alexa tried to sound more confident than she actually felt. "Be careful. I'll call you back later." Alexa went back to her procedures, but her thoughts were far away. She tried to calculate her options. Running away would only confirm suspicions. It was necessary to hold firm and deny everything. After all, the gun had been found in Michael's hand, and she was in the restaurant among dozens of witnesses. But when she emerged from the spa 2 hours later, she saw 2 police officers waiting at the entrance. "Alexa Reed? You are under arrest on suspicion of the attempted murder of Michael Foster. You have the right to remain silent." It all happened quickly and without drama. Detective Cole was waiting at the police station when the officers brought Alexa in. In the interrogation room, the atmosphere was tense. "Mr. Foster has regained consciousness," Diane began, looking directly into Alexa's eyes. "He claims it was you who shot him." Alexa didn't show any panic. "That's absurd. I was in the restaurant at the time of the shooting, as confirmed by dozens of witnesses and camera footage. Michael suffered a serious brain injury. His words are unreliable." Ballistics testing showed that the shot was not fired by Michael himself. The angle of entry of the bullet and the lack of powder residue on his arm rules out the suicide version. "That doesn't make me guilty. Perhaps someone broke into the apartment. I loved Michael. I had no reason to want to hurt him." Detective Cole studied the suspect's reactions. Alexa held herself well, but something akin to fear flashed in her eyes when the subject of motive came up. Really? We checked Mr. Foster's financial records. A week before the incident, he amended his will to exclude you as a beneficiary. He also closed joint accounts and canceled several scheduled payments in your name. For the first time, Alexa's confidence wavered. She didn't know about the changes in the will. I didn't know anything about it. There must be some kind of mistake. I don't think so. From the email correspondence we found, Mr. Foster was planning to sever his relationship with you. Here's a copy of the email he was going to send you on the day of the attack. Diane placed the printout on the table. In the letter, Michael explained that he no longer saw a future in their relationship, hinted at another woman, and informed her that his financial support was ending. Alexa turned pale, but quickly pulled herself together. That doesn't prove anything. Even if he was going to leave me, it doesn't mean I wanted to kill him. I'm an independent woman. I have other sources of income. Like what? A check of your bank history shows that for the past 3 years, 95% of all income has come from Mr. Foster. Alexa remained silent. Detective Cole continued, We've issued a search warrant for your apartment. What will we find there, Miss Reed? Nothing incriminating. I'm innocent. At this time, the forensics team was thoroughly examining Alexa's apartment in the posh neighborhood. Detective Cole received a message, found gloves with gunpowder residue in the bathroom trash can. A box of ammunition matching the caliber of the gun used to shoot Foster was found in the closet. When Diane broke the news to Alexa, she finally requested an attorney. At the hospital, Michael's condition continued to improve. His speech became more coherent and his memories clearer. He revealed that he and Alexa had a fight that night over his decision to end the relationship. I didn't want to be cruel, but I realized it was pointless to postpone the conversation. I told her that I had met another woman and that the financial support would stop within a month. How did she react? The detective recording the statement asked. Calm at first, even too calm, said she realized it had to end sometime. Offered me a drink to a new chapter in our lives. I relaxed, figured it was all going civilized. Then she asked me to close my eyes for a surprise. When I opened them, she was standing in front of me with a gun. Did you recognize the gun? Yes, it was my gun. I kept it in the safe in my bedroom. She must have known the combination. I remember her last words before the shot. If I can't have you, no one will. Then I heard the shot, and everything went dark. Michael's testimony was consistent with the rest of the evidence. Detective Cole was confident that the case was almost closed. It remained to be seen if Alexa had acted alone. On the third day after Alexa's arrest, Diane Cole brought Sarah Green in for questioning. Alexa's friend looked nervous, constantly rubbing the bracelet on her wrist and avoiding a direct look. Miss Green, when Alexa called you and suggested we meet at the Azure restaurant, did she mention a reason? No, just said she wanted to celebrate. Celebrate what? She didn't elaborate. It's strange to celebrate without a reason, don't you think? Especially at such an expensive restaurant. Diana watched Sarah's reaction carefully. Alexa loves the beautiful life. It's normal for her. When she arrived at the restaurant, did you notice anything unusual in her behavior? Sarah hesitated. She was excited, but not nervous. More like she'd just gotten some good news. And you didn't ask what the news was? I did. She said she'd tell me later that it was a surprise. Diane tapped her pen on the table and then asked the key question, Miss Green, are you aware that Alexa Reed planned the murder of Michael Foster? Sarah went pale. No, I didn't know anything, I swear. But her reaction said otherwise. The detective continued to press. We have phone records. You discussed her plans with Alexa at least 3 times in the week before the assassination attempt. Accessory to attempted murder is a serious charge, Miss Green. 15 years to life in prison. The fear in Sarah's eyes was replaced by humility. I had no part in the planning. Yes, she said Michael wanted to leave her, that she wouldn't let that happen. But I never thought she was really capable of such a thing. Did you inform the police of the possible danger to Mr. Foster? No. I thought she was just angry, blowing off steam. People often say I'm going to kill him, figuratively. And when she asked you to confirm her alibi? Sarah lowered her head. That's when I realized it was serious. But it was too late. I was afraid of becoming an accessory, afraid I'd be accused too. That's true, Miss Green, but cooperating with the investigation may alleviate your situation. Over the next hour, Sarah told everything she knew. How Alexa had found out about Michael's new woman, how she had discovered the changes in his financial affairs by hacking into his email, how she'd carefully planned the suicide by studying the angle of the shot and how to get rid of the evidence. She was obsessed with control, Sarah concluded. She couldn't stand the idea that he was choosing to end the relationship, that she would no longer live large at his expense. For her, it was a matter of power, not just money. The day after Sarah's interview, the detective team uncovered another important piece of evidence. In a dumpster a few blocks from Alexa's apartment, they found a glass with her fingerprints and lipstick marks, the same one she took from Michael's penthouse after the shooting. And in Alexa's cell phone, seized at the time of her arrest, experts found deleted but restored requests on the internet. Shot in the head chances of survival, how to fake a suicide, how to remove gunpowder residue from the skin. All the queries were made a week before the assassination attempt. The case against Alexa Reed was becoming irrefutable. The prosecutor began preparing a charge of attempted aggravated murder. In his hospital room, Michael Foster was able to get out of bed for the first time with the help of the medical staff. Doctors were impressed with the speed of his recovery, although they warned that full rehabilitation would take months, if not years. "I want to give full testimony in court," he told Detective Cole during her regular visit. "People need to know what she's capable of." "You're going to have to confront her face to face," Diane warned him. "It won't be easy." "I'm ready. She thought she killed me. I want to see her face when I testify." In the holding cell, Alexa Reed sat on a narrow bunk with her arms wrapped around her knees. There was no trace of her confidence left. The police had found all the evidence, Sarah had betrayed her, and Michael, who was supposed to be dead, was now preparing to testify against her in court. Her lawyer advised her to plead guilty and take a plea bargain to avoid the maximum sentence. But Alexa couldn't accept defeat. This was not how she envisioned her future. "I'm not pleading guilty," she told her defense attorney. "All the evidence is tampered with. Michael is lying out of revenge. I was going to leave him, not the other way around." But with each passing day, her situation grew more hopeless. Detective Cole had methodically gathered evidence: gloves with gunpowder residue, a glass with fingerprints, deleted searches, statements from Michael and Sarah, financial documents proving motive. Now came the hard part, the trial, where all this evidence would be presented to the jury and Michael Foster would personally confront the woman who had nearly cut his life short. In the holding cell, Alexa Reed spent a sleepless night. The preliminary trial was approaching, and the reality of the situation was slowly settling into her mind. 32 days had passed since her arrest, and with each passing day her situation was becoming more hopeless. She replayed the conversation with the attorney over and over in her head. "Miss Reed, the evidence against you is irrefutable," Robert Hayes, an experienced defense attorney specializing in felonies, was saying. "The prints on the glass, the searches on your cell phone, the witness statements, a jury will not have mercy on you. I already told you, I'm innocent, Michael's lying. And the gloves with gunpowder residue in your bathroom? And the box of bullets in your closet? And the phone records with Sarah Green? She's already given detailed testimony against you in exchange for reducing her own accessory charges." Alexa covered her face with her hands. "It's not what you think it is." "Then what is it? Explain it to me so I can defend you." For the first time since her arrest, Alexa felt a crack in her confidence. The lawyer was right. The evidence looked incontrovertible. But to admit her guilt? To admit that she'd shot in cold blood the man who'd provided her with a life of luxury for 3 years? That same morning, a phone call rang in Detective Diane Cole's office. "Detective Cole? This is Robert Hayes, Alexa Reed's attorney. My client wants to talk." An hour later, Diane was already sitting across from Alexa in the interview room. This time, there was no animosity between them. Alexa looked tired and defeated. "I wasn't going to kill him," she began in a quiet voice. "At least, not at first." Diana turned on the recorder. "Tell me everything from the beginning, Miss Reed." "We met Michael at a charity event 4 years ago. He was successful, charming. I was modeling, but my career was going downhill. He offered to be my patron, to pay for my apartment, clothes, travel. In return, I was to accompany him to events, to be with him whenever he wanted. A classic kept-woman relationship. You could put it that way. Everything was fine at first. I was getting money, he was getting a beautiful companion who asked no questions. Then I became addicted to this lifestyle. My cards were topped up every month. I lived in a luxurious apartment, wore designer clothes. I couldn't go back to a normal life anymore. And when Michael decided to end the relationship, I panicked. He told me about the other woman, that he would no longer finance my life. But it wasn't just about the money. He humiliated me, treated me like a replacement to be thrown away when he got bored. At that moment, Alexa showed emotion for the first time. Her eyes filled with tears of anger and resentment. Tell me about the day of the shooting. I found the gun in his safe a week earlier. The combination he didn't keep from me the day he was born. At first, I just thought I'd scare him, make him change his mind. But the more I thought about my future life without Michael's money secured, the angrier I got. Alexa described how she carefully planned her alibi, how she arranged with Sarah to meet him at the restaurant, how she calculated the time to get from Michael's penthouse to the Côte d'Azur. That night, I went to his place to supposedly discuss our breakup. I brought wine, told him I wanted to stay friends. He seemed content to let things pass in a civilized manner. When he turned away to put on some music, I pulled out a gun. I asked him to close his eyes for a goodbye kiss. Instead, I shot him. What did you feel at that moment? Alexa was silent for a long time. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Like it wasn't me. I just methodically executed the plan. Wiped the gun, put it in Michael's hand, collected the glass with my fingerprints on it, checked for hair or other marks, and then drove to meet Sarah like nothing had happened. While Alexa was finally starting to tell the truth, Sarah Green met with the prosecutor to formalize a deal to cooperate with the investigation. I swear I had no direct involvement in the planning of the assassination attempt, she assured. Yes, I knew Alexa was furious about Michael's decision to leave her. She was saying things like, he'll regret it and I won't let him do this to me, but I never thought she was actually capable of shooting a man. So why did you agree to provide her with an alibi? The prosecutor asked. She called me that day, said she needed to meet urgently, that something important had happened. When she arrived at the restaurant, she was strangely agitated. After a few glasses of wine, she hinted that she had solved her problem and that Michael wouldn't bother her anymore. It wasn't until the next day, when I heard about the shooting, that I realized what had happened. And you didn't go to the police? I was scared. Realized I'd unwittingly become an accomplice. Alexa called me as soon as the news of the shooting broke and reminded me that I had to confirm that she had been with me all evening. Sarah talked about how Alexa gradually changed in the last few months before the shooting, becoming more stressed, obsessed with her status and lifestyle. She often said she would never go back to a normal life, that she wasn't cut out for a humble existence. Michael was not a partner to her, but a source of income. When that source was jeopardized, it was as if she lost touch with reality. In the hospital, Michael Foster continued to recover. A physical therapist worked with him daily, helping him regain his coordination and muscle strength. Dr. Harris was impressed with the speed of his recovery. Your case is unique, Mr. Foster. Usually such injuries leave serious neurological consequences, but you are recovering remarkably well. Michael nodded thoughtfully. You know, doctor, I keep thinking about what happened. Not about the shooting. About my relationship with Alexa. I created a monster without realizing it myself, gave her money, luxury, status, and in return I got a bullet in the head. You're not to blame for her actions. Maybe, but I am to blame for building a relationship on financial dependence. Those kinds of relationships rarely end well. Detective Cole visited Michael regularly, updating him on the progress of the investigation and preparations for trial. On one such visit, she broke the news to him. Alexa has started to testify. She has confessed to the assassination attempt. Michael looked thoughtfully out the window of the hospital room. What prompted her to talk? I think reality finally caught up with her. The evidence is incontrovertible. Her lawyer convinced her that a partial confession and cooperation with the investigation was the only way to avoid the maximum penalty. Did she talk about me? About our relationship? Yes. She describes you as someone who treated her like a thing to be thrown away when she got bored. Michael chuckled bitterly. Maybe there's some truth to that. Our relationship was always transactional. I gave money, she gave her time and attention. But to shoot a man? She claims she originally only wanted to scare you. And in the process, accidentally pulled the trigger? Michael asked skeptically. No. She says she decided at the last minute that intimidation wouldn't solve her problems, that you'd dump her anyway and stop funding her lifestyle. On the day the trial began, the room was packed. The story of the kept woman who shot her wealthy patron drew media and public attention. Alexa Reed, dressed in a modest gray suit, looked very different from before. Without bright makeup and designer clothes, she seemed ordinary and vulnerable. Michael Foster sat in the front row. His head was still partially shaved, the scar from the surgery visible above his right ear. He came with the aid of a cane. The effects of the injury sometimes affected his coordination. Prosecutor Lisa Morris began with an impressive opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a classic story of greed and betrayal. Alexa Reed could not bear to lose the luxurious lifestyle that Michael Foster had provided her. When he decided to end the relationship, she planned his murder in cold blood, hoping that the death would look like a suicide. Only a miracle and the skill of doctors saved Mr. Foster's life, and only his survival allowed the truth of what happened that night to be revealed. The defense, for its part, tried to portray Alexa as a victim of emotional abuse and addiction. Miss Reed was involved in a toxic relationship where her worth was measured only by her looks and willingness to please. When Mr. Foster decided to replace her with another woman, he stripped her not only of her financial support, but also of the identity she had built over the years. Yes, her actions are inexcusable, but it is important to understand the context and psychological state that led to the tragedy. Over the following days, the court heard testimony from experts, witnesses, and Alexa herself. She no longer denied her guilt, but insisted she had acted in a state of severe emotional distress. I realize I made a terrible mistake, she said in a shaky voice. I lived under the illusion that money and status were all that mattered. When Michael decided to take that away from me, it was like I lost my mind. The trial culminated with Michael Foster's testimony. He spoke slowly, sometimes struggling to choose his words. The effects of the trauma were still affecting his speech. I remember every detail of that evening. How Alexa smiled, offering a drink to our future. How she asked me to close my eyes for one last kiss. And how instead of a kiss, I saw a gun pointed at my head. When the prosecutor asked if he saw the look on Alexa's face at the moment the gun was fired, Michael replied, "Yes, she didn't hesitate. She didn't look scared or unsure. There was just cold determination in her eyes. She wanted me dead." During cross-examination, the defense tried to undermine the reliability of Michael's recollection by pointing to the possible effects of the head injury on memory. But medical experts confirmed that his speech and cognitive functions had recovered enough for his testimony to be considered reliable. The most emotional moment was Alexa and Michael's confrontation in the courtroom. "Have you ever loved me?" Michael suddenly asked, looking directly at his former lover. Alexa was silent for a long moment, and then quietly replied, "I guess in my own way, yes. But I loved more what you gave me. Status, security, luxury. I'm sorry I couldn't separate one from the other." "If I had just broken up with you without mentioning the other woman, would you still be shooting? I don't know. Probably not. The thought that you chose another, that I wasn't good enough, that hit me the hardest." In closing arguments, the prosecutor emphasized the premeditated nature of the crime. Alexa Reed did not act spontaneously. She researched murder methods on the internet, developed a plan, created an alibi, took the gun from the safe, and methodically destroyed evidence after the shooting. This is not a crime of passion, but cold calculation. The defense, while acknowledging the crime, insisted there were mitigating circumstances. "My client fully admits her guilt and is sincerely remorseful. She acted in a state of severe emotional distress provoked by the sudden collapse of her entire life. She deserves to be punished, but she also deserves a chance at rehabilitation." After 2 days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict: guilty of attempted aggravated first-degree murder. Judge Eleanor Harris announced the verdict. Alexa Reed, you have been found guilty of the attempted murder of Michael Foster. Given the premeditated nature of the crime, the careful planning and attempted staged suicide, the court sentences you to 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. Alexa showed no visible reaction to the sentence. She stared straight ahead as the officers led her out of the courtroom. Sarah Green, as part of her plea deal, received 3 years probation for accessory after the fact to the crime. Her cooperation with police and lack of direct involvement in the planning of the assassination attempt were taken into account by the court. After the announcement of the verdict, Michael Foster gave a short interview to journalists. "I do not feel joy or satisfaction from this verdict, only sadness and disappointment. A relationship built on financial dependency deforms both parties. I created a situation where a man became so dependent on money and status that he was willing to kill to avoid losing it. That's a lesson for all of us." Detective Diana Cole, who observed Michael during the interview, thought about how easily people become hostage to their own desires and ambitions. Alexa, pursuing a life of luxury, lost her freedom for years. Michael, buying attention and affection, nearly lost his life. There was no true love in this story, only transactions, addiction, and ultimately betrayal. For Diana, it was a reminder of how dangerous a relationship devoid of genuine feeling and mutual respect can be. In her jail cell, Alexa Reed stared at a picture of herself and Michael taken on a yacht 2 years ago. They were smiling, tanned and beautiful, with glasses of champagne in their hands. Back then, the future had seemed cloudless and full of possibilities. Now she had 25 years in front of her within gray walls, the price she'd paid for her inability to let go of the illusion of a perfect life. At the rehabilitation center, Michael Foster was taking his first independent steps without a cane. A long road of recovery awaited him, but doctors were optimistic. Physical wounds healed faster than emotional wounds. Trusting people again would be the hardest part. Detective Cole closed Alexa Reed's case file. Another investigation completed. Another story of human tragedy documented. Diana knew she'd never forget Alexa's eyes when she'd finally admitted her guilt, not so much remorse as surprise at how far she'd gone in pursuit of a life of luxury, and how quickly that life had been reduced to rubble because of one impulsive decision.